Welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Today we're going to be talking about revving up your RevOps as a part of the Greater Dun Bradstreet Revenue Acceleration Summit. We are very excited to have you here today. We will have a question and answer session at the end. So please feel free to drop your questions in the Q&A box and we will take care of those at the end. All right, so I will get into the introductions for the speakers today. We are very excited to have Lori Wisdow. She is a VP Principal Analyst from Forrester. She is an expert in all things B2B marketing and specifically on the marketing operations, marketing technology, sales operations, all really rolling up under the new revenue operations team. I will also be here. I am a director at integrated marketing for Dun Bradstreet. So, we are very excited to really jump right in today and talk about how we can, help your RevOps team be more efficient and help your teams grow. So I will jump into the agenda slide. All right, so we will have the introduction where we go over at a high level revenue operations. And then Lori is going to jump into the architecture and the structure of revenue operations. And then we'll really be getting into the inflection points on, how that works structurally within your organization and the different measurements and approaches that you can take to measure your success. And then again, we will finish up with the Q&A. So without further ado, Lori, welcome, and I will let you take it from here.
Thank you very much, Maggie, and hello to everybody else. So yes, we're going to be talking about sort of the RevOps zeitgeist today. There certainly is a lot of excitement over the concept of revenue operations. There's been a lot of growth in revenue operations roles. I think the titles of Director of Revenue Operations, VP of Revenue Operations, Chief Revenue Officer are some of the fastest growing roles, titles on LinkedIn. And we'll talk about the definition and how it pays off and how to architect a good revenue operations system. So revenue operations manifest in many ways. It manifests through technology and through process and through strategy, operations. One of the things I like best about revenue operations is actually philosophical. I think revenue operations is really finally killing off this antiquated, archaic idea of the lead funnel, this passive lead funnel. Because at its core, its root, revenue operations recognizes that basically to produce predictable, consistent revenue, it really requires a supply chain that takes the raw material of marketplace need and through the coordinated action of many actors, manufactures revenue. And that's what we're really going to talk about today. So it's not surprising that revenue operations is a big thing because revenue is a big thing to B2B marketers. I've been with Forrester for nearly 10 years now, and we of course survey marketers every year, and we ask about what is the business goal that is most relevant to your performance in your organization, and revenue always tops the list. 94% of B2B marketers said that revenue was the highest percentage said the revenue was the most important metric that they were driving to. Now, in the interest of honesty and fairness, I have to say that while revenue is tops this year, the last couple of years, customer experience has been flirting with revenue. And, but I don't think that's inconsistent with a revenue ops organization or process, because really, in addition to driving revenue and maximizing revenue performance, the function of revenue operations can have a great impact on delivering a good customer experience as well. Now, companies that have good alignment between the three players, the three major actors in revenue operations, which is marketing, sales, and customer success, those companies are performing better. They're growing 10 to 15 times faster. They're more profitable. And surprisingly, they have 71% better stock performance, better marketplace performance in the stock market. So really what revenue operations is these functions all working together to common goals with common processes, with common technology, with common measurement systems around the function of generating that consistent, predictable revenue stream. So what is driving this rising interest in revenue operations? we Forrester conducted some research interviews and some anecdotal comments from our client base, and really wanted to share with you the voice of the revenue operations practitioners, sharing what is driving them. And first of all, there's just sort of the deliverables that revenue operations promises, balancing short and long-term priorities, and that's easy to understand. Marketing and sales often operate in different time cycles, time scales. Sales is committed to making the quarterly revenue, and bless their hearts, they do. And marketing knows that we're working on a longer time scale, sometimes 6 and 9 and 12 months out. So revenue operations is a way of balancing between those two different start of process and end of process aspects with regard to the revenue pipeline. Ensure that predictable, sustainable revenue growth. Also continuously improve revenue performance in terms of volume, velocity, and conversions effectiveness. So that's sort of the core drivers. We also have the recognition that this revenue supply chain, this end-to-end process, is actually one process. So what we have, without a revenue operations function, you sort of have an unnatural break in process flow between sales and marketing around the time of a sales qualified lead. You have a break in process between sales and success around the time of a closed deal. And you pretty much have almost no integration between marketing and customer success. A lot of it is kind of recognition that revenue generation is a process, and we want to optimize that end-to-end process. We want to sort of diminish this idea that there's some mid-funnel stewardship flip where marketing has developed this SQL and throws it over the wall to sales, and then sales owns the customer process and the selling process from that time onwards. Because we know that that's not how buyers buy anymore. They consume a mix of digital and human engagements throughout their entire buying cycle, throughout their entire life cycle. And they're increasingly unwilling to accept a disconnected experience. So it really, from the customer's point of view, it's one process. It's their buying process. And from the vendor's point of view, without a RevOps function, we're really sort of treating it as three separate processes. And we also have the opportunity now with the kind of data that we're now generating, because the systems we have generate so much data. It's just a byproduct of execution. And with that data and with AI, we really have the ability to, artificial intelligence, we really have the ability to look for improvement opportunities in that process. I've got account-based marketing standing on its own here, because if RevOps is really the tight alignment of marketing and sales and customer success, that's kind of the core philosophy of ABM as well, where marketing and sales and aftermarket customer success are all laser focused on the same set of accounts, the same set of objectives, the same set of revenue goals. So but in order to provide that alignment, what we're going to align on is our customer insights. And again, that's where the data and insights become so important. And then finally, again, pointing to data here, but like one set of consistent data that drives all three organizations, all three sub-processes. We hear eliminate finger pointing a lot. We hear the people come to the same table with 3 sets of books, 3 different sets of reports. And what we really want to do also is just that sort of inefficiency in how we see the business is also just drives inefficiency in process while we're trying to align all these different perspectives on what's really going on in our business. So we want to also eliminate the inefficiencies that this go-to-market model can sometimes, the company's go-to-market models can sometimes produce as a byproduct. So lots of reasons, lots of interests, lots of reasons we want to talk about revenue operations. I wanted to talk a little bit about what I call the architecture of revenue operations. And what I'm showing here is like sort of as a business system, the official term would probably be a business systems framework, but it's a way of looking at a business system like revenue ops, if you want to call it a process like revenue ops, through a different set of lenses. because we're going to make a lot of changes as we put into place a revenue operations function, or as we optimize the revenue operations function. And when we make those changes, we need to look at it from these various lenses. Strategically, what are we trying to achieve? What processes do we need to change here, there, and everywhere to make sure that this change is rolled out holistically? What kind of people issues, organizational issues are we going to have? Do we need new structures? Do we need new skills? Do we need new people, additional people? What kind of technology? How will we automate this process? Or what kind of technology will underpin the execution of this process? And then most importantly, how are we going to measure that we have made this change successfully, that we've accomplished this revenue operations objective successfully? So what are our goals? What are our metrics, our measurement system? And then how are we going to govern against those goals and metrics? So at Forrester, we have a term called lead to revenue marketing, and L2RM. And the L2RM process is pretty much the life cycle lead to revenue or revenue ops process as well. It starts with attracting the right kind of targeted traffic via our inbound or our outbound programs. We then nurture those leads, nurture those deals and accounts and buying units, and we convert, and there's a revenue event. But it doesn't stop there. This is a life cycle process. So we onboard that customer. We use data and analytics to identify new opportunities to cross-sell. We use data and analytics from customer success metrics to figure out how to maximize value realization. And our ultimate goal is that the customer engages with us. They renew, they expand, they become an advocate. And that is the lead to revenue process that a RevOps team is functioning. It's about driving continuous cycles of revenue over the entire life cycle of our relationship with a client. Now, from a vision point of view, we must never forget that that's our process, but our process must be calibrated to the customer's process, to the customer's life cycle. So that while they go through discover, explore, and buy, and use, and ask, and engage, we are at all times calibrating our sales and marketing and support efforts against that to help customers move through that buying journey. And that leads us to the process lens. I said earlier that I'm excited about the revenue ops philosophy because it finally, I think, puts to bed this really antiquated funnel mentality where marketing brings hundreds, thousands, dozens, whatever, of leads into the top of the funnel. And through effectively, with the funnel optics, some process of serial attrition until at the bottom of the funnel, some tens or dozens or hundreds of deals pop out. And that just doesn't represent, it seems passive. It seems as though there's some force like gravity that makes that happen. And we know that's not true. We know how much work it takes to make that happen. So we've kind of flipped that on its side, upside down, one way or the other. And we think about the revenue operations process as more of an escalator. Yeah, there are things that we use to consider goals, leads, MQLs, marketing qualified leads, SQLs, sales qualified leads, deals, customers, advocates. I mean, these are still goals. But rather than thinking of them as ends in themselves, they're really stage gates in the end-to-end process. They are places where you measure. They're places where you see what's my volume, what's my velocity, how well am I converting from one to the other. So they're very relevant points, but they're points in a process. They're stage gates. They're not ends or goals in and of themselves. Now, as the buyer goes through their journey, they go up the escalator and increase their commitment to us. But also, the reason we like the escalator model is it takes energy to move, and the model indicates it takes energy to move people through this process. So for, I think a useful way of looking when you're thinking about your revenue ops function is to drop the idea of a funnel, think much more about a pipeline, a supply chain, or in terms of the process, the escalator. So another of the lenses in our RevOps business system is the technology lens. And I like to think of technology, and obviously technology is its own whole discipline with regard to RevOps, but I like to always root people on the fact that, you know what, any technologies we choose are defined by our core processes, the core marketing activities. How are we going to target? How are we going to attract? How are we going to nurture? How are we going to convert? And that's those hows for those common core processes, which are common for almost every marketer. The hows are can be very, very different. And so depending on the type of audience you have, the maturity of the market segment you're operating inside of, your own channel structure. So it's important to start any technology discussion with a thoughtful process about how are we going to accomplish these things with our audiences. Then there is the automation. Those are our hows. So we're going to rely more on inbound than outbound. We're going to rely more on, we're going to really need personalization and ABM kind of personalizations in our nurture because because of the nature of our sales cycles. And so what kind of automation do we need for our campaigns, for our engagement marketing, for our personalization, for our content management creation? So automation falls directly from the processes. And then at the core of the automation, the core of this pyramid really is data and analytics. You know, whenever I go into any new client who's thinking about revising their MarTech architecture, the first thing people focus on is their data. And because data is siloed and fragmented and not of high quality and frankly a red hot mess. And but data by itself isn't the answer, right? Data is great and it is the fuel that goes into our automation, that fuels our automation systems. But what really improves our automation is insights. Insights that we derive from the data that help us understand when to activate campaigns, when to trigger engagement with prospects and customers, and also that helps us measure outcomes and performance so that we can get on that continuous optimization bandwagon, really. So, you know, there's I don't know if this has evolved right structure yet for revenue operations. My colleagues at Serious Decisions produced a paper a couple of years ago and said RevOps might just be a mindset. And I certainly think it does start with a mindset of marketing and sales and customer success, all adopting that strategy of one process calibrated to the customer's buying journey, to the customer's life cycle. But and that might work in a company that's maybe where processes are new, where you're developing these processes, maybe smaller companies, where there isn't a lot of inculcated silo mentality. But most companies are finding to really adopt a revenue operations model that it's better to instantiate it with organizational structure. So this is where the chief revenue officer, the chief or the VP of revenue operations comes into play. And then there are two models under this more formal CRO perspective. One is where marketing and sales and a function called RevOps, combination of sales ops, revenue ops, marketing ops, all come together and report organizationally. And I almost think into a CRO or VP of revenue operations, but I almost think that's a precursor to the third, where customer success comes into the mix as well. And I think the reason I'm so keen on making sure that you think about customer success and marketing and sales as part of the revenue operations players is because revenue is not a once and done affair. Too many times, too many marketers are still stuck in that funnel mentality where we're all about volume at the top of the funnel and then the rest of the organization maximizes lifetime value. Obviously, SaaS software, recurring revenue models have made marketers more aware of lifetime revenue, but we need to have sort of an active role working with the customer success folks on not just looking for incremental revenue opportunities, but also really understanding what are the drivers of success, because incremental revenue opportunities will not come from companies who are not realizing their original goals and objectives and outcomes. So marketing needs to understand, really start taking a role in value realization, working with our compatriots in customer success. So the model on the right is, I think, if I look at these, I think it's a maturity curve. They are all three viable models, but they're going, if you're really committed to revenue operations, you're probably going to end up on the right-hand side. So there's also performance management, another lens in planning our business system. And there are, I can get kind of passionate about performance management because we measure for a multitude of reasons, for a number of different reasons. And the two that are most important are we measure to prove or validate. We measure to prove that a decision that we made was right, or that we need to make a decision because something's going terribly wrong, or that we're getting ROI and delivering value. So we're measuring to validate our performance, our existence as an organization. And believe me, that's hard enough. And I understand there's probably no marketer I talk to is actually happy with how well they're able to measure the impact they have on the organization. But while we're improving that, I don't think it's really important to forget that the real reason we measure is not to report, but to improve. We measure to get better. And so we want to look at process flaws. We want to look at opportunities for process improvement, for innovation. And we really want to look at process execution so that we can drive out the inefficiencies that are wasting money, wasting time, and hampering or impacting in a negative way and hampering our conversions and our end-to-end performance results. I just wanted to share this because, as I said, I'm passionate about it, so I wanted to drive it home. Very few % of our B2B marketers measure with the goal of continuously improving their marketing performance. I shouldn't say very few, it's 54%, so it's more than half, but it's still only half, which is not good enough for me. But when we tease that number apart to people who were high performers versus low performers, we found that 60% of the high performers versus 42% of the low performers actually measured with a goal of continuous improvement. By the way, high and low performance here were determined by meeting your company's revenue goals in the prior year. So the high performers exceeded their company's revenue goals by more than 10%. And the low performers met or didn't meet or met by less than 10% their revenue goals. I just wanted to also share when in thinking about measurement is that, you know, when you put a new organization together, a marketing operations organization, you're going to be visible in terms of producing results, and you're going to have to serve many different stakeholders. So it's important to think about how goals, the very same common goal that at the top line just is improve predictable, consistent, profitable revenue performance, at different levels, it manifests differently. So at the enterprise, those goals are those that affect the P&L, the balance sheet, and other strategic objectives. So those might be overall revenue, but improve share of market, improve our margins, reduce SG&A. At the enterprise level, goals may manifest like that. At the departmental level, we're looking for things like how is marketing contributing to pipeline? How are we improving customer satisfaction? So goals for objectives that really govern what we do as the processes and are supposed to deliver to the organization as the purpose of our departmental organization. And then at the operational level, we may have much more granular goals: improve our campaign performance, improve the quality of customer and prospect data, move to an integrated multi-channel campaign strategy. And those are very real and very hard to do and very good when we make improvements against those. But those in and of themselves, unless we make the linkages to how they impact the achievement of departmental goals, and we make the linkages as to how those departmental goals contribute to the achievement of the enterprise goals, then our operational achievements are also often dismissed as irrelevant. So it's really important to understand how the levers, how this lever drives that lever and drives that level, and communicate our performance in those terms. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because you will have access to this material. But this is from a blog post that a former colleague of mine, who's now left Forrester, but this lives on. She wrote something that said 20 things more important to measure than revenue. And the blog post is listed in the sources. But what are we trying to accomplish? I mean, because these are, again, all the drivers of how we're going to reach our revenue goals. Shift the revenue mix from low margin to high margin products. shift the mix from many small deals to fewer larger deals, or the reverse, if we want to be less dependent on elephants. Penetrate new geographies, new industries, new product lines. Decrease the costs for customer acquisition, or increase new customer acquisition, increase average customer lifetime value. So you can see there's a number of goals here that are far more granular than just measuring revenue. But when we measure these things, if they're part of our strategy as to how we are going to improve revenue performance and get to that predictable, consistent revenue production, then these are, I think I put these in here for two reasons: to point out that it takes a strategy to do that, and then also you need to be prepared to measure against that strategy. So high-performing RevOps teams, really a RevOps business system, requires alignment across these various elements of the architecture of RevOps. So if you think about a goal we're going to try to achieve, let's just say we are going to try to achieve one of those metrics that I had just on the prior screen. We're going to try to break into a new geography, or we're going to try to shift the mix. Let's say we're going to try to shift the mix from a few large deals to more mid-sized deals, a higher quantity of mid-sized deals. Well, we need to make sure that our processes are more scalable. They're more defined, they're more scalable, they're more repeatable, because we're going to be less dependent on human interaction. We're going to need to make sure our technology can automate those processes. We're going to make sure we have alignment in the whole organization on that's the strategy. We're going to make sure we have the people who can scale up that process, who are communicators, who are digital marketers, rather than skilled business development executives. We're going to make sure we set our goals, our metrics, and we measure based upon the new objective. And if we don't do all those things and look at that one change of shifting from fewer large deals to many medium-sized deals, then we'll probably fail somewhere along the way. So I wanted to also focus today on inflection points. This is along the lines of measuring to get better, but where in our process do we have the opportunity to apply energy? To where should we instrument that process so that we can see how we can improve the trajectory of our success at that stage in the process. Also, I want to look at the places where we're losing momentum, where we're going down here, where our trajectory becomes negative, because those are the places we need to remediate. So when I look at the inflection points, I think you can really, if you think about the customer life cycle, the customer lifetime, and our revenue over the course of that lifetime, and that's the top black line there. I'm sorry, that's the dotted line there. And if we manage our data well and apply our analytics, we can we can make these kinds of decisions. We can take these kinds of actions. We can target better, define a better ideal client profile so we can acquire customers who will be more profitable. We can make them profitable faster because we understand what other propensity revenue streams we can drive. We can drive those cross-sell and upsell revenue streams. We can all the way through to focus on recovery, decrease attrition. And the difference, and this is a thematic diagram, obviously, but between that dotted line of what we could do in terms of driving profitability and revenue from a customer over the course of their lifetime with us is impacted, increased by how well we use our data and how well we analyze our revenue streams and our relationship with that customer. So I just wanted to go over that schematic, that process in a little bit more detail by looking at each stage of the buyer journey. So in the discover phase, we can use analytics to gain customer insight. We want to, first of all, target highly profitable segments, and we can use propensity analysis for that. We want to profile the right customers, go for the right customers in those high value segments, and we can use define our ideal client profile using our data and analytics and pattern matching as to what has given us a successful customer profile in the past. We also want to reach the right prospects, so we can target customers and individuals with lookalike modeling, lookalike targeting. In the explore phase, we want to really adapt our marketing parameters, our marketing responses to the customer response. The customer's exploring, we're nurturing. And so we want to personalize engagement because that will improve our outcomes. And we can we can analyze customers' behavior, and we can identify the things that are improving our outcomes. We can also analyze those customer responses and basically attribute different behaviors, different actions, different tactics to different revenue outcomes. Although we want to improve conversions at all stages of our customer life cycle, in the buy phase, we really want to really, excuse me, improve our outcomes, and that really makes and focus on the right prospects. So lead scoring and attribution analytics will really help us understand what has driven the right kind of outcomes with the right kind of prospects in our past behavior, and let's focus on that and spend more on that in terms of attention, money, and energy in our future actions. And of course, the phases after acquisition, after the initial revenue event are used, the customer takes advantage of the product or service, begins to use it, has questions, and eventually begins to get value, engage with us, as I said before, renew, expand. And what we want to do in these phases, which I've, in the interest of time, grouped together as customer marketing, I guess, is we really want to leverage historical insight with forward-looking analysis so that we can drive additional revenue streams. We can look for cross-sell and upsell opportunities. We can expand our wallet share. We can manage customer deflections. So really the opportunity post initial revenue event to maximize customer lifetime value is really high if we apply our data and analytics and our marketing strategies against or to or with customers in this phase. You know, in our most recent survey of B2B marketers, and we asked at which stages of the customer life cycle do you use your demand management tactics and technologies, only 55% of our respondents said that they use those technologies and those strategies with the customer base. We think that's going to change dramatically because, as I've been hearing from many marketers, is that customer retention and customer growth is like the new acquisition as we are in a pandemic time and really focusing on our customers. So we expect that 55% to get a lot higher in the coming months. So if I could leave you with a few takeaways, one is that RevOps is really all about alignment of marketing, customer and sales, and customer success, and aligning those three organizations largely by calibrating each of those organizations to the customer's process. Revenue ops delivers value in terms of customer lifetime value, in terms of revenue performance, even in terms of stock performance. It takes a holistic business system to make the changes, to enact the new capabilities that are embodied in the revenue ops philosophy. And for maximum value of bringing a revenue ops organization together, you really need to think about the inflection points in your process, your end-to-end process, and instrument at the inflection points. Measure, use data, use analytics to improve the outcomes at each of those inflection points. And then final thought, I guess, is that really all of this is really not possible without really solid data foundation and analytics that really underpin and support the entire revenue operations philosophy, structure, organization. So with that, I'll open it up to questions, and I thank you for your attention. I wish you all good luck as you rev up your RevOps.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Lori. So we did have a couple questions come in. All right. So first one is, can you talk a little bit more about RevOps part in ABM? So if you wanted to jump into that, and then I also have some perspective from the Dun Bradstreet side as well.
Sure, I'll take it first. I think the rise in RevOps, in the interest in RevOps is kind of a companion to the rise in interest in account-based marketing. And I think account-based marketing has really rooted in B2B marketing. It had I think, a slow rollout because I think some of the vendors were confusing the customers as to whether it was targeted advertising or was it data and analytics or was it some sort of aligned playbooks, and that sort of worked itself out. And I think most B2B marketers recognize that it's a strategy, and depending on of aligning sales and marketing to a certain set of accounts, which might be 10,000 accounts that we target through an ICP, an ideal client profile model, and analytics, or it might be 50 accounts that are our target-based accounts, but we're aligning. And the thing we're aligning to, axiomatically in account-based marketing, is the account. So we can't align well against that account unless we have the insights of that account, unless we can identify those accounts, if it's a lot of them. So I think that they kind of are going hand in hand. And when I said that ABM is rooted, in our last survey, let me get this right, 55% of our respondents said they had a mature ABM program, and 44% of our respondents said that they were piloting an ABM program. So 99% of B2B marketers are doing something with regard to ABM. So I think it's kind of, I wrote a blog actually probably a year ago that ABM is just good marketing. And now that we have the tools to do it, why wouldn't we do it?
Yeah, that's what we're seeing on our side as well. We're seeing it that, people want to get in front of the right accounts, right? So for marketing to get in front of the right accounts, for sales to get in front of the right accounts, you have to be able to accurately identify them, right? So whether, it's a small scale account-based marketing or, whether you're putting together propensity for large scale targeting for your programmatic, we're seeing it on really both sides of the spectrum that, the teams that are supporting the activation and that are at the foundation. So really, again, this like revenue operations, marketing operations, sales operations, you have to be able to accurately identify those accounts for ABM for it to be successful.
Yeah, again, and what I like that is sort of like emerged and people understand is there's not, ABM is a philosophy. It's a way of going to business and going to market, or as we would say, go to customer. And it could be against a large number of accounts that are just really well defined and well targeted through great segmentation and analysis, or a very small set of accounts. And your information and data needs are different in those cases.
Yep. Okay, so the next question, what would you consider your priority when like getting started for revenue operations for a quick win? I think that's a pretty broad question, but I would think that, from our side for a quick win would be to, really assess from a Dun Bradstreet perspective, like where your data is at, right? If you have all these separate teams that have yet to come together under a revenue operations, strategy, I think that from our perspective, understanding, where your disconnects and your silos are would be a very good first step. Because at that point you can get, more aligned to, what you need to do moving forward for the targeting, for the activation, for the measurement.
So I would agree, because I think all paths to marketing improvement go through data and analytics. I mean, they just do. The only thing I might add is that this is such an intractable problem for large organizations that piloting, maybe take one business unit, maybe take the launch of a new product, maybe take something that's strategic, important, not insignificant, but also tractable. It can happen, and you can get your arms around it and model this new model and prove out that that it generates business results, so that you can get that early win and build the groundswell of support for basically this kind of transformation.
Yeah. The one thing that I do love about this revenue operations, like new organization, is that I think that the conversation about like aligning sales and marketing, there's always been that healthy, tension between the two, and everyone's trying to always get closer. And revenue operations really just is like holistically that coming together, but adding in the customer support and the operations side of it, which I think is really great. But I agree, like a good pilot program product launch sounds like a perfect way to do that, because you would have a, a specific ideal customer profile that you'd probably be going after for a new product. So that makes a lot of sense. Okay, so it says, Lori, you spoke a little earlier about whether there would be a need to, hire new people when you're building out your revenue operations. Are there any people skills that you would highlight that you see are, commonly a gap when people are moving towards RevOps?
I think there's two. One is process. B2B marketers are not process mavens. I mean, we have, hard drives full of templates for doing things, but end-to-end connected process and the idea of continuous process improvement and how do you measure process isn't something there's a lot of core competency in B2B marketing operations, B2B marketing. And that's just because we've only had automated processes for a very short period of time that can give us that end-to-end perspective. So it just hasn't been built into the competency pool set. So I would, I think that's an area where you might bring in someone who's not a marketer, who, but also is an agile, flexible thinker, and customer centric. Customer experience people are often very good at this. And because I think that is a bit of weakness for many marketing organizations. When we do an innovation maturity assessment, and we do surveys on the 5 things that make you good at innovating, and process is one of them, and it's always scores as the lowest competency. So that's one. And then I also think that analytic skills, there are certainly marketing, the amount of people who have come into marketing and who succeed in marketing because they're data-driven marketers and they really love data and they know how to handle it. That has really increased in the last several years. But there still are, I think, people who are really good at data visualization, at understanding the right kind of questions to ask, and understanding how to structure process so you can gain metrics, so you can improve. So those are the 2 areas. I mean, to me, the big win here is all around putting into place the mechanism that not only aligns and eliminates all that waste and all that sort of thing, and is customer centric, but sets you on the path for continuous improvement. And that comes through process and analytics, really.
Great, thank you. Okay, and this is the last one that we have. Can you speak more about measurement of process and efficiency improvements?
For a long time, it seems. There's something we use in Forrester that is 3 V's and 3 V's and 3 E's, and it's volume, velocity, and value, and then efficiency, effectiveness, and engagement. And and those are categories of measurement. And by the way, they're different. They're of differing importance depending on, I mean, if you have a really fast, short cycle buying process, then volume and value are more important than velocity. If you have a really long, extended buying process, then improvements in velocity really pay off in terms of revenue performance. So, which ones of those categories of metrics are more important depends on your process. But it is kind of, I said this earlier in the presentation, those things that we currently think of as goals in and of themselves, MQLs, SQLs, are not goals. And believe me, when we survey marketers, operational marketers, on what the most important metric is for them, now the most important goal is revenue, but the most important metrics are either, I think, SQL is like 55% of people say it's SQL, a smaller percentage, like 48, say it's MQL. And that's crazy to me, really. Those are measurement points in a process where, as I said, the state changes. The customer's more committed. We know more about the customer or the prospect. And we should consider those stage gates and measurement points and measure volume, value, velocity, effectiveness, efficiency, cost, and conversion. And then increasingly engagement, because that's really our proxy for, are we going to be moving forward? That's our leading indicator.
Yep. Love that. All right. Well, that's really all the questions that I had in the Q&A box. So, with that, I wanted to thank you, Lori, so much again for all of your great insights. I'm glad that we were able to follow up, with the Q&A. For everyone else that's listening, we have a lot of other amazing sessions that are coming up. We're going to have BMC come on and speak. Their director of revenue operations is going to come on and talk about how they create a revenue success in a digital first world. So really exciting to hear that customer story. And then similar to what you talked about a little bit earlier, Lori, we're seeing, and so is Traction Complete, that people are wanting to focus a lot on, tapping into their current customer base, upselling their customer base, and landing and expanding. So David Nelson, who's a managing partner at Traction Complete, is going to be talking about how to plan your land and expand strategy with customer insights. So we hope that you guys will be able to join us for some of the other sessions. If you have any questions at all, please feel free to, reach out. We are happy to help. And, if you have any questions or, would like to get started in understanding, where you sit foundationally with the data and analytics that are going to be feeding into your revenue operations team, please go to dnb.com. We have a complimentary DNB IQ report that will help you understand the health of your account data and all the different enrichment points that we can help with to help you really flesh out who your customer is and to help you with all that targeting and alignment that we spoke about earlier. So with that, thank you everyone. Lori, appreciate you again and have a great day.